don't just want the news, they want the truth. What others hide, I bring to you with evidence. Politics, corruption, human rights. No filters, no fear, just facts. I don't stop until the system shakes. Hello and welcome to Trending Daily. I'm Makhdoom Shahabuddin. Pakistan has once again emerged as an important diplomatic player as tensions between Iran, the United States and Israel continue to threaten wider regional stability. Iranian Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi has held telephonic conversations with Pakistan's Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir and Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan for the second time in just 24 hours. The latest contacts come at a critical moment. Washington and Tehran are preparing for another round of talks while military tensions remain high and the possibility of renewed attacks continue to hang over the region. But the repeated communication between Tehran and Islamabad is particularly important. Pakistan shares a direct border with Iran. Pakistan has long-standing relations with Saudi Arabia, and Islamabad has consistently emphasized dialogue, diplomacy, and peaceful solutions to regional conflicts. So what role can Pakistan play at this critical moment? Can Islamabad help reduce tensions between Iran and the United States? And could Pakistan become one of the key regional channels through which diplomacy prevents a much wider war? Let us take a closer look. Ladies and gentlemen, Iranian Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi has once again contacted Pakistan's Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir as diplomatic efforts intensify across West Asia. The timing is significant. Araghchi spoke with Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir and Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan for the second time within 24 hours. This repeated engagement suggests that Tehran is actively consulting regional governments as the conflict reaches another sensitive stage. Iranian state media IRNA reported that the officials reviewed the latest diplomatic efforts and initiatives aimed at maintaining and strengthening security and stability in the West Asian region. The officials also emphasized regional cooperation and political solutions, and this is where Pakistan's position becomes particularly important. Pakistan is not an outside observer in this crisis. Iran is Pakistan's immediate western neighbor. The two countries share a long border and have long-standing historical, cultural and economic connections. At the same time, Pakistan maintains close relations with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries. This gives Islamabad a unique diplomatic position. Pakistan has the ability to communicate with different sides of the regional equation. And in conflict where mistrust is increasing between major powers, maintaining communication channels can itself become a valuable diplomatic tool. The question now is why Tehran is repeatedly engaging Islamabad. The answer begins with geography. Pakistan shares a direct border with Iran. Any escalation inside Iran or along the Gulf region can have consequences for Pakistan. A prolonged conflict can affect border security, it can affect trade, it can affect transportation, it can affect energy supplies, and it can affect the movement of people across the region. For Pakistan, therefore, regional stability is not simply a foreign policy objective. It is directly connected to national security and economic interests. This makes Islamabad one of the countries with the strongest incentives to prevent the conflict from expanding. Pakistan also has diplomatic relations with countries on different sides of the regional divide. That means Islamabad can maintain conversations even when relations between other countries become increasingly difficult. This diplomatic space can become important during periods of conflict. When military tensions rise, countries need channels through which messages can be delivered, concerns can be communicated, and possible solutions can be discussed. Pakistan's repeated communication with Tehran shows that Islamabad is actively maintaining that channel. The latest telephone contact between Araghchi and Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir comes after another series of high-level conversations. On Sunday, Araghchi had already spoken with Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir. He also spoke with Turkish Foreign Minister. Then came another round of calls on Monday. Araghchi again spoke with Pakistan's military leadership and Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister. The rapid pace of these conversations is important. Diplomatic contacts normally increase when governments believe a solution is approaching a critical point. The region is currently facing that situation. Washington and Tehran are preparing for another round of negotiations. At the same time, Iran continues to warn against military action. The United States continues to demand restrictions on Iran's nuclear capabilities. Israel remains focused on Iran's missile and nuclear capabilities, and the wider region is concerned about possibility of the conflict spreading. Pakistan is therefore engaging at a time when diplomacy could determine whether the conflict moves toward de-escalation or another round of military confrontation. Pakistan's diplomatic position is particularly significant because Islamabad has close relations with both Iran and Saudi Arabia. The relationship with Iran is shaped by geography and a shared border. The relationship with Saudi Arabia is based on long-standing political, economic, and strategic ties. This places Pakistan in a sensitive but potentially important diplomatic position. Islamabad has interest in preventing tensions between regional powers from becoming a larger confrontation. Pakistan also has direct interests in preventing instability along its western border. That is why the latest contact between Araghchi and Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir deserves attention. It shows that Tehran is continuing to keep communication open with Islamabad. At the same time, the parallel conversation between Araghchi and Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan indicates that Iran is engaging with multiple regional powers. This creates space for regional diplomacy, and Pakistan can potentially contribute to that process by keeping communication open and supporting political solutions. The central message emerging from the latest contacts is the emphasis on political solutions. According to IRNA, the officials discussed diplomatic initiatives aimed at maintaining and strengthening security and stability in West Asia. They also emphasized the potential of regional cooperation. For Pakistan, this approach is consistent with its broader diplomatic position. Islamabad has repeatedly emphasized dialogue as the preferred way of addressing regional disputes. The current crisis presents as an opportunity for that diplomatic approach to gain greater importance. Military action can create immediate pressure, but military pressure does not necessarily resolve the underlying political disagreements. The dispute involving Iran, the United States, and Israel includes multiple complex issues. Iran's nuclear program is one. Iran's missile capabilities are another. Regional security is another. The role of allied armed groups is another. And the Strait of Hormuz adds a major economic dimension. These issues cannot be easily solved through a military action alone. They require negotiation, and negotiations require communication. This is why regional countries such as Pakistan can become important. Pakistan's geographical location makes this situation particularly sensitive. To Pakistan's west is Iran. To its southwest lies the Arabian Sea. Across the wider maritime region are the Gulf states. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. Any prolonged disruption in this area can affect international shipping and energy markets. Pakistan itself depends on stable regional trade and energy flows. This means Islamabad has a direct economic interest in preventing prolonged instability. A wider war could increase shipping costs, it could increase energy prices, it could disrupt supply chains, and it could create additional inflationary pressure. Pakistan therefore has strong reasons to support diplomatic efforts that prevent further escalation. This is one reason why Islamabad's engagement with Tehran matters. Pakistan is not simply responding to a distant international crisis. The developments are taking place within Pakistan's immediate strategic neighborhood. One of the most important issues in the expected Washington-Tehran negotiations is the Strait of Hormuz. Before the conflict, around 20% of the global oil and liquefied natural gas supplies passed through the waterway. Iran has largely closed the strait during the conflict. The consequences have been immediate. Energy prices have risen, shipping has been disrupted, and concerns about global inflation have increased. For Pakistan, this issue has particular economic significance. Pakistan is an energy importing country. Higher international fuel prices can increase the cost of imports. Higher shipping costs can increase the price of goods, and sustained energy pressure can make inflation management more difficult. Therefore, reopening the Strait of Hormuz is not simply a matter of Washington and Tehran. It is also a matter of regional economic security. Pakistan has a direct interest in seeing the waterway remain open and international trade continue normally. This gives Islamabad another reason to support diplomatic efforts. The biggest concern now is that the conflict could expand. The United States and Israel launched military operations against Iran in late February. Washington and Tel Aviv said their objectives included limiting Iran's missile capabilities, preventing Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, and targeting its support for allied armed groups. But the conflict has already moved beyond a limited confrontation. Attacks have spread across the Gulf and the Red Sea. The conflict has also affected locations farther away, including a Mediterranean facility in Egypt. The wider the geographical scope of the fighting becomes, the greater the risk for regional countries. Pakistan is watching this development closely. A larger conflict would create security challenges across the region. It could increase pressure on borders, it could affect trade routes, and it could create new economic pressures. This is why preventing escalation is in Pakistan's national interest. Pakistan's role in the current situation can be understood through one central principle: regional problems require regional diplomacy. Islamabad has an interest in seeing Iran Iran's differences with the United States addressed through negotiators rather than continued military confrontation. Pakistan also has an interest in maintaining stability among Gulf countries. This is particularly important because Pakistan maintains close relations with Saudi Arabia and other Arab states. A major regional war could create pressure on Islamabad to navigate increasingly difficult diplomatic choices. That is something Pakistan would prefer to avoid. Instead, maintaining balanced relations allows Islamabad to continue communicating with regional capitals. The latest call between Araghchi and Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir therefore carries a wider message. Pakistan remains engaged, Pakistan remains in communication with Tehran, and Pakistan has clear interest in supporting diplomatic solutions. Iran's simultaneous engagement with Saudi Arabia is equally important. Iran and Saudi Arabia have historically been major regional rivals. In recent years, however, the two countries have made efforts to improve relations. That makes Saudi participation in current diplomatic efforts significant. Pakistan has close ties with Saudi Arabia. Pakistan also maintains communication with Iran. This gives Islamabad an important perspective on the broader regional situation. If diplomacy succeeds, cooperation between regional countries could help reduce tensions. If diplomacy fails, the consequences could spread far beyond Iran. The involvement of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey suggests that regional capitals are increasingly interested in preventing another cycle of escalation. Another major factor is the position of US President Donald Trump. Trump has repeatedly threatened escalation against Iran since Feb, but after days of threats of new military action, he has now indicated that planned action was suspended. Trump has also claimed the Middle Eastern countries reached the parameters of a deal aimed at ending the conflict. Iran has disputed Trump's account that Tehran requested the pause. But despite the disagreement, Iran has continued consultations with regional governments. This is where Pakistan's diplomatic engagement becomes even more relevant. If Washington and Tehran are willing to return to negotiations, regional countries can help create a more stable environment for those discussions. Pakistan can contribute by supporting dialogue and maintaining communication. The objective would not necessarily be for Islamabad to dictate the terms of final agreement. Instead, Pakistan's role could be to support regional stability and encourage the continuation of diplomatic channels. Despite the diplomatic efforts, Tehran is continuing to send strong warnings. On Sunday, Araghchi warned that any hostile action by the United States or Israel would receive what Iran described as a decisive and proportionate response. Iran also warned against participation by regional countries in hostile actions. This warning shows how fragile the situation remains. The diplomatic process has not eliminated the possibility of military escalation. One new attack could potentially trigger another cycle of retaliation. That is why regional efforts and diplomatic efforts are taking place so rapidly. For Pakistan, the priority is to ensure that the conflict does not move closer to its borders or create instability across its immediate neighborhood. Pakistan has already experienced the consequence of instability in its western neighborhood. Any further escalation involving Iran would create additional security concerns. The Pakistan-Iran border is strategically important. Stability along this border is essential for trade and movement between the two countries. A larger regional conflict could place additional pressure on border management. It could also affect economic activity in Balochistan. Pakistan therefore has a direct reason to encourage Tehran and Washington to continue negotiations. The longer the military confrontation continues, the greater the possibility of unpredictable developments. For Islamabad, preventing that scenario is a major strategic objective. The conflict is also creating economic consequences across the world. Oil prices have increased, shipping has been disrupted, the Strait of Hormuz remains under severe pressure, and inflationary concerns have intensified. The US president has argued that the higher fuel costs in the short term are justified by the goal of preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. But prolonged economic pressures can create political challenges. Consumers face higher fuel costs, businesses face higher transportation costs, governments face increased inflationary pressure. Pakistan is also vulnerable to these global economic developments. Any sustained increase in international energy prices can place additional pressure on Pakistan's import bill. This makes diplomatic de-escalation important not only from a security perspective but also from an economic perspective. The question now is what Pakistan can realistically contribute. First, Islamabad can continue maintaining communication with Tehran. Second, Pakistan can continue engaging with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf partners. Third, Pakistan can support negotiations between Washington and Tehran. Fourth, Islamabad can emphasize the importance of keeping regional waterways open. And fifth, Pakistan can encourage regional countries to prioritize political solutions over military escalation. Pakistan does not need to be a formal mediator to play a diplomatic role. Sometimes the most important contribution is keeping communication channels open. When countries are no longer speaking directly, regional partners can become important channels for communication. Pakistan's repeated engagement with Iran shows that Islamabad remains part of those regional conversations. Pakistan's importance could increase if the diplomatic process becomes more complicated. If Washington and Tehran reach an agreement, regional countries will have to help maintain stability. If talks fail, regional countries will face pressure to prevent further escalation. Either way, Pakistan has a reason to remain engaged. Islamabad has relationships with Iran, Islamabad has relationships with Saudi Arabia. Pakistan also maintains important relations with Turkey and other regional governments. This network gives Pakistan diplomatic access that could become increasingly valuable. The current crisis is therefore testing Pakistan's regional diplomacy. The challenge is to maintain balance while protecting Pakistan's national interests. For Islamabad, the priority is clear. Pakistan needs stability in its neighborhood. A wider war could create security and economic challenges. It could disrupt regional trade. It could increase energy prices. It could create pressure on Pakistan's western border, and it could force regional countries to make increasingly different choices. That is why Pakistan's engagement with Iran matters. Ladies and gentlemen, Iran's latest diplomatic outreach has once again placed Pakistan at the center of a rapidly developing regional situation. Iranian Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi has spoken with Pakistan's Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir for the second time in just 24 hours. He has also held another conversation with Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan. These calls come as Washington and Tehran prepare for another round of negotiations. The main issue remains Iran's nuclear program and the future of Strait of Hormuz. But behind these negotiations lies a much bigger question. Will the region move toward diplomacy or another round of military escalation? For Pakistan, the answer matters directly. Iran is Pakistan's neighbor. The Gulf is a major source of energy and economic activity. Saudi Arabia is a key partner. And the stability of the wider region directly affects Pakistan's security and economy. This gives Islamabad a strong interest in supporting diplomatic solutions. Pakistan does not need to be the loudest voice in the negotiations to play a meaningful role. Maintaining communication itself can be powerful. The repeated conversations between Tehran and Islamabad show that the channel remains open, and at a time when tensions are extremely high, keeping those channels open could prove critical. The coming days will show whether diplomacy can succeed. If Washington and Tehran return seriously to negotiations, regional countries can help create space for de-escalation. If talks collapse, the risk of renewed military confrontation could increase. For Pakistan, the priority will remain clear: protect its national interest, maintain regional stability, prevent conflict from reaching its borders, and support political and diplomatic solutions wherever possible. The latest contact between Iran and Pakistan therefore carries significance far beyond a single telephone call. It is part of a wider diplomatic effort at a moment when the future of West Asian stability remains uncertain. And Pakistan, because of its geography, relationships, and diplomatic access, could become an increasingly important voice in efforts to prevent this conflict from becoming a much larger regional war. This was Trending Daily. I'm Makhdoom Shahabuddin. See you in the next episode.